30,000 years ago, if you were alone in the dark and heard movement beyond the firelight, your body would react before your mind had time to catch up. Muscles tighten, breathing slows, your eyes scan the edge of visibility, searching for shape in shadow. And then you see it, still, silent, watching. A wolf. Not the animal we recognize today, but its ancestor, leaner, harder, shaped entirely by survival. Its attention is focused, deliberate. It is not curious about you in a harmless way. It is assessing, calculating distance, risk, opportunity. In that moment, there is no connection between you, no shared understanding. Just two species meeting in uncertainty. And yet, across thousands of years, that distance closes. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, almost imperceptibly. The same lineage that once watched from the edge of darkness now waits by the door, follows a pointing hand, responds to a human voice with precision and awareness. This transformation feels so complete that it's easy to imagine it was guided, that humans reached out and reshaped wolves into something new. But the reality is far less controlled and far more complex, because the first step toward the dog was not taken by humans. It was taken by wolves that chose not to walk away.
Dogs are so deeply embedded in human life that they often feel like an extension of it. They anticipate our movements, respond to our emotions, and adapt to environments that range from dense cities to remote wilderness. They are not just present, they are integrated. But this level of integration is not something most animals can achieve. Even species that have been domesticated for thousands of years do not read human behavior with the same sensitivity or consistency. There is something fundamentally different about dogs, not just in how they look, but in how they think, how they respond, and how they exist alongside us. To understand that difference, you have to go back to a time before domestication had a name. A time when humans were not in control of their environment, and wolves were not on the edge of extinction or dependence. Both species were independent, capable, and cautious. The question is not simply how wolves became dogs. It is how two species that began as competitors developed a relationship so stable, so deeply rooted, that it continues to shape both of them today. And the answer begins with something that doesn't look like a beginning at all.
The world before dogs. In the late Pleistocene, the world was in constant motion. Climate shifted, ice advanced and retreated, ecosystems changed. Survival required flexibility. Humans lived in small groups, moving across landscapes that offered no guarantees. Food was uncertain. Shelter was temporary. Knowledge was passed through experience, not permanence. Wolves thrived in this environment. Their strength was not just physical, but social. Packs coordinated movement, shared responsibility, and adapted quickly to changing conditions. Their success depended on cohesion, timing, and communication. Humans, in many ways, operated similarly. Cooperation increased hunting success. Shared roles improved efficiency. Communication allowed planning and adaptation. But despite these similarities, their relationship remained distant. Wolves were not drawn to humans, and humans did not seek out wolves. Encounters were brief, cautious, and often avoided. There was no reason to expect that to change. The first approach. What changes the dynamic is not intention, but opportunity.
Human activity creates a new ecological niche, one that did not exist before. Camps generate waste. Bones are discarded. Food is not consumed with complete efficiency. These remnants accumulate in predictable locations. For most predators, approaching human camps is a calculated risk with little margin for error. But for a small subset of wolves, the equation shifts. These individuals are not fearless, but they are less reactive. They hesitate longer before retreating. They observe more carefully before deciding. Over time, they begin to approach, not directly, not openly, but cautiously at the edges. They wait until humans leave. They move in quickly, take what they can, and retreat again. Each successful attempt reinforces the behavior. And with repetition, the distance begins to shrink. A new selective pressure. This interaction creates a new kind of selection pressure, one that is not based on hunting ability or physical dominance, but on behavioral flexibility. Wolves that can tolerate proximity to humans gain access to a stable food source. This reduces the need for energy-intensive hunting and increases survival rates. As these individuals reproduce, their offspring inherit similar tendencies. Not learned behavior alone, but underlying temperament, slightly reduced fear, slightly increased tolerance, slightly more curiosity. Across generations, these small differences accumulate. The result is not a sudden transformation, but a gradual divergence. A population begins to form that is distinct from fully wild wolves, not because it is controlled, but because it is shaped by a different environment. Humans are not actively selecting these animals, but their presence is acting as a filter.
The biology of calmness. One of the most significant changes during this process occurs within the stress response system. Animals that react less aggressively to stimuli experience different hormonal patterns, lower baseline stress levels, altered adrenaline responses, changes in development. These internal shifts affect more than behavior. They influence physical traits as well. Over time, changes appear in skull shape, ear structure, coat coloration, and reproductive cycles. This connection between behavior and physical form reveals something important about evolution. When you select for temperament, especially reduced aggression, you do not just create a calmer animal. You create a different kind of organism. These early proto-dogs are not yet integrated into human society, but they are no longer fully aligned with wild wolves. They occupy a middle ground, shaped by proximity and repetition. Familiarity and function. As generations pass, humans begin to recognize these animals not as isolated individuals, but as a recurring presence. They are seen repeatedly, behaving consistently, maintaining distance without escalating. Familiarity reduces unpredictability, and unpredictability is often what defines threat. More importantly, these animals begin to provide a functional benefit. Their sensory abilities allow them to detect movement, scent, and sound beyond human capacity. Their reactions, alertness, vocalization, posture serve as early indicators of environmental change. For humans living in uncertain conditions, this becomes valuable. And value leads to tolerance. The edge of the group. These animals are still not part of human groups, but they are no longer entirely separate. They exist at the edge, close enough to interact indirectly, distant enough to avoid conflict. This boundary space becomes critical. It allows repeated interaction without forcing direct contact. It creates a zone where behavior can adjust gradually, without immediate consequences. In this space, both species begin to adapt to each other. Wolves become more responsive to human presence. Humans become more accepting of their proximity. And over time, that boundary begins to blur.
The development of social alignment. As interactions increase, selection begins to favor not just tolerance, but responsiveness. The ability to interpret human behavior becomes advantageous, recognizing when humans are active, when they are resting, when they are likely to leave food behind. These patterns matter. Eventually, this extends into something more complex: sensitivity to social cues. Modern dogs demonstrate an ability to follow human gestures, interpret tone, and respond to subtle changes in expression. These abilities are not fully present in wolves, even when raised in human environments. The difference lies in evolutionary pressure. Dogs evolved in a context where understanding humans improved survival. Wolves did not. This shift represents a deeper level of adaptation, not just behavioral, but cognitive. At some stage, humans begin to influence the process more directly, not through structured breeding, but through consistent choices. Certain animals are allowed closer, others are driven away. Behavior determines proximity. This introduces intentionality into the system, and with it, a fundamental shift. The animals that remain are not the most dominant or aggressive. They are the most adaptable, the least reactive, the most capable of existing without conflict. This challenges a common assumption. Domestication is often imagined as a process of control, humans selecting the strongest, shaping them through force. But in this case, the opposite is true. Dogs emerge not from power, but from restraint. They are the descendants of wolves that did not escalate. Expansion and specialization. As human societies stabilize, the relationship expands. Permanent settlements create new needs: protection, herding, tracking, companionship. Animals that can fulfill these roles become valuable. Selection becomes more refined. Traits are reinforced, exaggerated, diversified. Over thousands of years, this leads to the wide range of forms seen today. Size, shape, behavior, all vary dramatically, but the underlying process remains the same. Each variation is an extension of the original shift, from avoidance to proximity, from reactivity to responsiveness. At the center of this entire process is a quiet but powerful realization. The transformation from wolf to dog was not driven by dominance. It was driven by compatibility. It was not a story of conquest, but of convergence. Two species adjusting to each other over time, shaping each other's behavior, creating a shared space where neither had to fully give up what they were. The dog is not simply a modified wolf. It is a new kind of social organism, one that exists in relation to humans. And that is what makes it unique.
Conclusion. Today, when we look at a dog, we often see familiarity, comfort, and connection. But beneath that is a history that stretches back thousands of years. A history defined not by sudden change, but by accumulation. The wolf is still present in instinct, in structure, in behavior. But it is layered with something else, something that emerged slowly through repeated interaction and gradual adjustment. This process did not erase the wild. It redirected it. And in doing so,
it created a relationship that is still evolving. The dog is not what happens when a wolf is tamed. It is what happens when a wolf learns, over generations, that staying close is worth the risk.